Hello and welcome to another episode of Mindfulness Mondays, a bonus podcast series within the I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today I am joined, actually for the very first time, for a guest on the Mindfulness Mondays podcast series. I am joined by Josh Bailey. Josh is a Australian Defence Force veteran. He's a former police officer in Australia, and he's also a provisional psychologist there. G'day, Josh.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me, and hello to all your listeners as well.
No, thank you for coming on. And I actually just forgot the best part, which is a little intro that I've given Josh, because he would never do it for himself. But Josh is also a mental health speaker, writer, and advocate for the first responder and veteran community, which is a title that he truly deserves.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
That's
Thanks.
all right. And you are officially, I give you permission to steal that from now on, and I expect that to see in your bio moving forward.
I will.
All right. So Josh and I, this is, I think, the third time that we have spoken on a podcast episode. So if you go back to episode 26 of the normal I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness episodes, that is where Josh and I had our original podcast interview conversation. And then additionally, we jumped on episode 46 together, where we discussed some of the emotions and feelings around significant military holidays, being like Anzac Day in Australia and Memorial Day in America. So if either of those pique your interest, you can go back and take a listen, or just to get a little bit more background on Josh's lived experiences. But today we are jumping on because June is a pretty busy month, one might say, and it has been PTSD Awareness Month, as well as Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And given Josh's experiences in that field, we sort of wanted just to kind of jump on and have a bit of a chat, and maybe, I don't know, kind of look through the rearview mirror at the past month, just to kind of see where the chips have fallen.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Thanks for that great intro. So today in Australia, it's the 27th of June, and it's PTSD Awareness Day as well.
Oh,
so
it is too. There you go.
Health.
Even better.
Excellent. Yeah, so I've chosen myself to focus on the Men's Mental Health Month. And I think I'd like to start off with the basics, and that is anyone who's joined the police or the emergency services and the Defence Force, you have contributed to basically the fabric and the societal structure that makes up your nation, and that contribution, no matter how big or small you believe it is contributed to our culture. So sacrifice contributes to culture. So all your listeners, I'd really like to thank them and really congratulate them on making that decision to serve your country. So that's the first thing I'd like to say to everyone. And the second one is, really, we only really get one shot at making the decisions that we make. And those decisions may or may not cause people some sort of angst. They may cause pride. They may cause shame, sadness. But it's how we respond after those decisions have been made. And a lot of people don't see the decisions that are made. They see the results of that decision.
Yeah.
So really, a lot of decisions are exceptional, and we all should be proud. And there's ones that could cause moral injury. There's ones that cause mental health, such as PTSD, depression, generalized anxiety. Hence the Mental Health Month and PTSD Awareness Day. But we really need to understand is that you are number one. You are the most important person in the world, and that you should be congratulated on the choice of sacrifice you've chosen to make for your country as well.
I guess what I sort of wanted to ask you is, and I think you are someone in quite a sort of a unique and remarkable position, because you have grown up, and I think Australian and American cultures, we have a lot of things in common, and then some differences. But one of the things that I think that we've had in common is stigma in regards to more particular men and discussing their mental health. So I think like over here there is a bit of like a therapy culture where a lot of people will openly discuss having a therapist, going to therapy, all of that kind of thing. But you obviously grew up in Australia, you joined the military when you were young, you went into law enforcement, two professions that they're just like the nature of you and I talking, are culturally very reluctant to engage in any kind of mental health conversations or anything like that. But then additionally, since leaving, you have gone into the mental health field. So I guess given the nature of your experience and then now what it is that you do, like, where are the through lines that you see? Where are the improvements? Like, talk to me like a little bit about that.
The improvements in myself or the organisation that I was.
Both.
Yeah. Okay. So let's generalise the Australian culture.
Mm-hmm.
Seeking assistance from an organisation can have, and often does have, negative impacts on the person's career. So one of the things
Same over here. Yeah.
that I'd like to point out is that women are forming greater, they're taking on greater roles within defence and emergency services, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're watching the generations before them, which are predominantly men, either not seeking assistance or seeking assistance and the organisation becoming quite adversarial. So if we're not creating a culture where mental health assistance is encouraged and celebrated, then for those people coming through, which are both male and female equally,
Mm-hmm.
then we're now going to cause an adversarial, or continue to have that adversarial sort of approach towards mental health for the ladies as well as the blokes coming through.
Yeah.
So now we're going to see more effect on women who are the caregivers. So they're not going to be able to give that care. Well, statistically, it suggests that they're not going to be able to give that care because they're going to be affected by mental health, and they're not going to be able to, like the men before them, receive appropriate mental health training. So they're probably going to lose their identity, lose their purpose, lose their job, and exit the organisation rather than be supported and encouraged to improve through seeking mental health assistance. So that's one thing we're seeing organisationally.
Yeah.
Individually, if I can, what I used to do was use a lot of alcohol as an escapism. I was aware that the problem that I had was alcohol. I would drink more than most, and people would be like, "Yeah, I'll go out with party time, Josh." But I had no problems communicating when I was drunk.
Yeah.
So I'd make friends, and it would be part of my social. It would be part of my identity. There was the police officer Josh, or there was the army Josh. Well, when I joined the regular army, I was married, so it was different. But when I was younger, in the police force especially, I would just go out because it'd be 4 on, 4 off, and there was the police, and then there was everybody else. So you'd hang out with your police mates, and because you are working shift work, you'd have Mondays and Tuesdays as your Saturday nights. You'd be on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the local pubs loved it because it was an income for them as well. But that was what's called a maladaptive strategy. Instead of taking mental health seriously, which back in the early 2000s, there really wasn't as acceptable as what it is now.
Yeah.
So now, one thing I would say is your environment consists of two things: the people you associate with and your physical environment. And so much like dissociative episodes, if you remove yourself from the environment that causes a dissociative episode, then your symptoms are going to lessen. So if you remove yourself from the environment where your negative maladaptive strategies are flourishing, then your symptoms are going to lessen. So my drinking pretty much stopped once I left the police. Yeah. So there's a bit of a correlation there. Whilst I lost my identity and I was disappointed, my drinking pretty much ceased.
Yeah.
So it was people. The point I like to stress to your viewers is people don't become addicted to gambling, alcohol, drugs, nicotine, opioids overnight. It is a cascade effect. So you've got they believe that anxiety comes first, and you have depression, and then you may have a loss of purpose, identity, motivation, and then for coping, you then get into those, alcohol, drugs, whatever.
Yeah.
That's, a year down the track. But the setting event has occurred ages ago, and we just haven't picked it up on it or not. We're not catching the start of mental health decline. We're not catching it. There's no identified area for people to catch it. Having a 10-minute chat with a psychologist who comes in and says, I'm the organisational psych and I want to have a talk about it. There's no point talking about it half an hour after something's occurred because they're still immersed in that environment.
Yeah.
Trauma hasn't hit them yet. They're still immersed. They're still within that environment. They're still focused in that area. You need to talk to them a week later, because people don't have nightmares while they're conscious. You talk to them after they've had their first 2 or 3 sleeps, then have a chat to them.
Like the kind of dust has settled, and wherever it's landed, it's kind of probably going to land. So whether it's, and I think we've probably I know I've discussed it on previous episodes too, like you've got the, like acute stress disorder, which is, in that sort of first beginning month of and a lot of the symptomology mimics or mirrors PTSD.
Yes.
But obviously to reach the point of PTSD or PTSI, whichever people want to identify with, it has to have gone on for longer than a month. So like you're saying, it takes that few days to kind of see whether it actually, processes through the mind and the body and all that kind of thing, and everything calms back down and recalibrates the way that it's meant to after we experience trauma, or it's lingered and you might need a little bit of help sort of transitioning it through.
Yeah, so what we've worked out not me, but what people smarter than me have worked out is that post-traumatic stress disorder, 2 things. One is there need to be a defined event. It has to be a setting event. Whereas with other disorders, not so much. Acute stress disorder is one, and an adjustment to a point. With PTSD, hippocampus, which sits inside your brain, that's responsible for forming new memories. So the hippocampus, so what happens is you observe something with one or more of your senses, right? So in this case, you're observing something most likely either a smell or a sight. If it's someone who's a burning body or something burning or someone's deceased for a while, you're going to smell it and then you're going to see it. So that goes through to eventually that'll find its way to the hippocampal region of the brain. The hippocampus is responsible for forming new memories. It's also responsible for deciding whether or not we need to act, or it basically is a ground zero point for new experiences.
Yeah.
You talk to someone half an hour after a traumatic event, the hippocampal region hasn't had a time to appropriately respond and sort out what needs to be sorted out within that time period. Hence the memories, hence the dreams, hence all that sort of negative reactivity and flashbacks, because it hasn't had time to process the physical region in your brain. And they've discovered that your hippocampal region actually can lessen in size from post-traumatic stress disorder. If it does that, then we're unable to form new memories once again because there's a smaller region, smaller neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
So essentially breaking that down for your listeners, there's a point in your brain which takes in new memories. It gets smaller, and therefore you're not able to retrieve, or you're not able to form new ones over time. But then when you recover, there is evidence to suggest that it does grow back in size.
Fair enough.
Which is not uncommon because your liver can regenerate. So it's not the only organ within.
And so does our skin. Our skin regenerates. All of the things.
Yeah.
I guess would you personally, because you said, obviously you've been very open in previous episodes that we've had about using, alcohol as a maladaptive coping strategy. So then how has the shift been to go from 2 careers where you were not encouraged to talk about feelings or any struggles with mental health, and if anything you were discouraged, and there is such cultural stigma attached to then going down the path of studying psychology and becoming a provisional psychologist? Has that sort of or I guess, was that shift really challenging for you, like the mindset shift to kind of come full circle to kind of go, oh no, like this is actually how it's meant to be, and that's the incorrect way that we've been kind of trained all of our lives?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
think for the listeners, I feel that the organisation maybe, I'm going to say adversarial towards mental health acceptance, is because it stops what people believe, that the flow of their work, and therefore their person becomes unreliable. They're no longer dependable. And then you've got people above them who control or manage them who just aren't skilled in that area of managing someone
Yeah.
with a mental health issue.
Yeah.
And they're worried about their promotion and the next posting and all that sort of stuff. So they're
Yeah.
concerned about that. So
Yeah.
there's a selfish issue within the individual who manages people who experience mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
In psychology, when you're studying it, that doesn't happen. With psychology, though, you do learn that simply because you ignore the effects of your trauma, depression, anxiety, dependency, doesn't mean those effects go away. The
Mm-hmm.
longer you ignore them, the more serious they get. If you think about a pot plant in a pot, that tree that you've just planted is your negative, is your mental health struggles. The
Okay.
longer you leave that tree, the longer it's going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
The more it grows, the more water it needs, and then that's going to be your mental health, your maladaptive strategy. So my tree was being filled with copious amounts of alcohol
Mm-hmm.
until the decision was made for me that it was time for me to had a breakdown, and then people make a decision for you. So with psychology, you learn that um, ignorance is really no excuse. But
Yeah.
one of the things that they don't touch on, and it's like a reinforce, is that people have joined the emergency services and defence and military. We call it defence in Australia, military in the US. So that is a tremendous achievement that you've done, and you've contributed to the culture and history of your country and your organisation. You've made a great contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Psychology doesn't acknowledge that. They just acknowledge the fact that there's something wrong. You only see a psychologist when there's disorder and it needs to be fixed.
Okay.
So if I could just touch on the concept of dichotomy, and
Mm-hmm.
that is, it either is or it isn't. So an example of that is there are two types of people in this world: those who believe that Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and those who don't.
I
So,
knew that was coming.
so, right? So
I've known you too long now.
the point I would make is there needs to be transition in between. It's not black
Mm-hmm.
and white thinking where it's all good, it's all
Yeah.
bad. There
Yeah.
is, today Josh was, normally he's a nice guy, but today he was a bit grumpy. So if you think about mood and personality, so mood is the weather and personality is the climate. People aren't all good or all bad. The situation isn't all good, it's not all bad. And in
Yeah.
psychology, they can be, this situation is bad, but it can be fixed. This situation is not so bad, and it can also be fixed.
Yeah.
Whereas in the organisation, the situation can't be fixed. It's bad. Must remove the person.
Yeah.
So there's a dichotomy there in organisations,
Yeah.
all good or bad. In
Yeah.
psychology, there's a transition between this can be fixed, it can be mitigated, it can be assisted.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
your diagnosis is not final, and it's not. Your life doesn't end at a diagnosis, and no one needs to know about it either.
Yeah. And I guess too, like, not to, I think, like, in all honesty, like, I would want to be fair to department and military and defense force organizations where I guess their sort of focus is on, like, in all of them, like troop readiness and being able to react and respond to critical event happening, whether it's like wartime, whether it's an emergency, all that kind of thing. So I think there's space to acknowledge that that's kind of their focus, but I think as education has gotten better, knowledge has gotten better about the kind of disorders that first responders and veterans are prone to experiencing, which typically are job related, there needs to be a little more, what word do I want to say? A little more latitude, like you're saying, that it doesn't have to be either or. There can be like degrees of, I guess, capacity. And like you're saying, it's like, okay, like if someone's struggling with this now, if the organization supports them through that time and gets them the help that they need with a like culturally competent resource, well, then that person is going to be able to come back and integrate in and perhaps even be better for it, and a resource for that department or organization, because then they might be able to recognize it in other troops or be a resource in like a peer way to help those people. Whereas if you just fucking throw them out with like the garbage, then you're just like throwing away your investment in that person, as well as any future contribution that they could make in like a really positive way.
Yeah, that's right. So that's very well said, Erin. I agree with everything you've said there. The key words there were contribution. People
Yeah.
made contributions, and they shouldn't be discarded because of the decisions they've made have resulted in actions of which they that they are trying to recover from. You know, if I told you to control your hippocampus, you would be like, "What?" And so what's there is you can't control your blood pressure, you can't control your heartbeat, you can control your breathing, but you're not going to be able to control your thalamus, your hypothalamus, your hippocampus. They're all parts of the non-conscious nervous system that has to adjust. And the consciousness, which is you responding to depression, anxiety, PTSD, needs to accept that that's all happened behind the scenes without them even knowing. And a lot of that happens when you're asleep anyway. So you are not to blame for something you're not really in control of. Might be inside your body, but you're not really in control of it. It's kind of weird. The brain named the brain, but doesn't understand the brain. Weird analogy, but that's where we are.
Yeah. So, and I mean, and again, we are the only species that have the ability that we're aware of to have like metacognition. We think about our thinking. And so also like, you know, a lot of we call them like maladaptive skills or strategies. Often they've developed over time because we were trying to find something that was adaptive or that just helped us cope in the moment. And so something that might be good in the moment that helps us get through a challenging time or facing a threat or in something like that, but then translate that over to something that you do over and over and over again, and it might move from being adaptive in the moment to maladaptive long term.
That's correct. So it's really what we talk about is the severity, the frequency, and the longevity of behaviours, which sort of makes up the impacts of those behaviours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, I think anyone listening would know that you know, post-traumatic stress is obviously something that we've sort of, I think, more known about in soldiers and veterans for a really long time. And now it's becoming more prominent in the first responder realm. And it was just because like the chronic and cumulative nature of our roles and the exposure that we have. And then added to that, the fact that both professions are male dominated, not solely male, but definitely male dominated roles. I think that's kind of where we find ourselves and where we land when there's men struggling with their mental health because of these roles that they're playing, and then the, you know, constant and cumulative trauma exposure. I think, you know, I think it's important, like Josh and I have, you know, been throwing around a couple of different terms and all that kind of thing, but we all know this kind of stuff now. We're all well aware of it. So
I agree.
I think I wonder what your either maybe understanding is or what your opinion is of men choosing to live with intentionality now that we are aware that, you know, they're at a higher risk, that, you know, some of the cultural stigma is getting broken down, but it's also a choice whether you believe in that stigma or you walk to the beat of your own drum. Like, where do you feel like people's, personal agency lies when it comes to living with intention and looking after themselves when they do perform these kinds of roles?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So agency refers to how much they can control, their basically their functioning,
Yep.
behaviours
Like
and
exercising their free will.
cognitions
Yeah.
and everything. How much they can own their actions.
Mm-hmm.
So with their intentions, a lot of behaviours are intentional, but their intent, the result of those behaviours isn't really their intent. Their intent is to escape and then magically be better the next day after 75 beers. So intentionality, people probably don't have. They have intention, but the intention's aligned to their adaptive strategies they're using.
Okay.
And quite often, they could be locking up someone who's doing the exact same thing they are, drinking too much, perhaps taking drugs on the side. The issue with talking to police, for example, about their drug use is they're not going to say they're using drugs, one, because it's illegal, so you never know.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of illegality there towards some of the coping strategies, hence why alcohol is so accessible. And it's also socially acceptable to drink alcohol. If you weren't drinking alcohol on New Year's Eve, people think it weird. So a lot of things as well, listening to that is intentionality to be able to keep functioning, which is where our coping strategies come to, in order to fulfill their purpose of being part of their identities wrapped around serving and sacrifice. So they start off with caffeine, and caffeine fits part of our social and our sort of drink and food structure. So people aren't aware of how much they have in their lives until it becomes too late, and then they start getting headaches, and they decide to go on a wellness kick or some sort of detox, and then they realize they get headaches. They can actually get caffeine-induced mental health issues such as depression, anxiety. You can actually get caffeine-induced insomnia, anxiety, depression. You can actually get opioid-induced personality disorders. You can get restfulness, hypervigilance from caffeine as well. So it might start with caffeine, goes to alcohol, and then it might go to something more serious. But their intention is to be able to keep functioning. But if the intentionality is to keep functioning whilst choosing something positive, such as calling your mate, talking to your mates about it, and then if it's serious enough to go and see a psychologist, be encouraged to see a psychologist and celebrated for doing so and then getting better, then intentionality gets focused more on being a positive human. Your agency is focused more on the reason why you joined in the first place, which is service, being a good husband, father, uncle, being a good mother, aunt, sister, being a positive pillar in the community. So intentionality can get influenced by the decisions we make on how we respond to the trauma we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, something that you would know through your studies and I've sort of learnt through my studies too, is you've got that kind of little cycle of like something happens and then we sort of think about it and then we have an emotion and then there's an action, a behavior, a response, or that kind of thing. And we often think that it's the event that causes our reaction and our behavior, or it's the way that it makes us feel that causes our reaction and behavior. Whereas more often than not, it's actually the cognition attached and it's how we've interpreted it. It's our perception of it. It's how, it makes us think about ourselves or think about another person or something like that, that actually really is the cause and effect of that behavior or action or response or something like that.
Yeah. So I think the other thing, you're right. It's we don't know. It's not the question of whether you develop PTSD. It's the question of how will you recover from the traumatic event.
Yeah.
And so bringing you back before acute stress disorder, it's the longevity of it, and also the symptoms are less serious.
Yeah.
Hence why they resolve within 30 days. PTSD is outside that 30 days and then, within that 30 to 6 month window, 30 days to 6 months. Then after that, it becomes chronic. That's because the severity of the symptoms and the frequency and the duration have increased over that time. Now, it could also be that a person may have experienced 16 traumatic events as opposed to just one.
Yep.
So most adults, traumatic event, mum and dad have died. Fair enough, traumatic event. But in the police or the army or wherever else you've been sacrificing for your country and community, you could see more than one in a shift. Like I was on a shift, I attended a fatality, and then after that, there was, so fatality for your listeners, what that meant is a person had died in a car accident, and I watched the person get cut out by the fire. She was alive by the time we got the ambulance. They were doing resus on her, and she was talking to me in the back seat, and the driver was in the front seat, and he was carrying on whinging and bitching. He'd caused the accident, but he was trapped. So they left him in there because he was conscious. And now he's conscious because he's screaming. The lady in the back, you could tell she was in a series that this is going to die.
Yeah.
I cut her out, and then she was pronounced life extinct on the way, but at the hospital as official. Then after that, we went to a bikie brawl in Canberra. So the bikies turn up this night. So I've been a fatality, watched someone die before my eyes, pretty much. Then I go to these bikers who are the rebels. They were the rebel OMCG, and they're into a blue. So I'm doing that in one night, dealing with these dudes, and they're like, hey, mate, is that a shotgun? Did I see that? Yeah, it is. And then all of a sudden it disappears under someone's jacket, and the guy drives off, and there's 5 of them. Oh, okay, no worries. So you've got that in, and that's just one night. And there was another time when, I attended a fire, and the guy tried to hit me with a golf club. And so there's a fire going on at a block of flats. He's tried to hit me with a golf club, so I've had to take it off him, grab the golf club, get him on the ground, handcuff him. These flats are still burning.
Yeah.
You could hear explosions going off. Now we found out it was the accelerant from the those shaving cans or whatever they were, right? But it's still going off, and I'm still evacuating people. And inside there was gas bottles, and he had gas bottles ready to go, and he was rigging up his premises to call the police so that he could get them in and set booby traps for people. Now that's just on one day.
Yeah.
Now you have a cumulative effect or a cascade effect. It builds like a sandwich on top of each other, and so the hippocampal region has to respond to that. And then you have to have in your conscious behaviors of relaxing, and then it turned into maladaptive strategies of drinking too much and too much caffeine and whatever else. That's going to affect how you respond. And the organisation, unfortunately, doesn't acknowledge that. They don't acknowledge all the effort you've done and the decisions you've made. They just see someone who, unfortunately, what they believe doesn't contribute anymore. And so because organisations want people who can contribute, which is fair enough, that's why they're there. But if you look at it, you can't contribute as good as you can now. However, in the future with your assistance, I'm back better, stronger, more experienced. I haven't made mistakes. I've gained experience, and I can pass the experience on to others so that they don't have to learn the same mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we also don't really practice mindfulness either. We're not really taught about that. And so you have to wait until after you leave, and then, this is a thing called mindfulness.
I know. And I definitely hope that there is like a bit of a shift in regards to that. And I think, you've shared it with me before on a previous episode, like kind of almost like I don't know whether you would call it like a very quick like mindfulness sort of trick, or just a I call it like the triple A's. Do you want to because I think well, so for Mindfulness Mondays, I normally we normally try to offer like actionable things that people can like implement into their life.
Absolutely.
And one of like the best ones that you have like ever sort of like shared with me, just I guess because of the simplicity of being able to remember it, I think is one of the best parts about it. So triple A, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So we have thoughts that we it's not so much what they are, and back to that dichotomy of all good or bad. Thoughts aren't bad; they're not good. It's how we respond to them that matters. We can't control the thoughts that come into our head. However, we can control how long they stay there and what we do with them. So the triple A's is one way I've came up with to help control your thoughts and your actions and what happens as a response to the actions. So it's pretty simple. It's awareness, aware that thoughts have come into your head.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that thought. Do I need to act on it? Do I need to keep it? Is it true? Look for evidence. Is it not true? Can I continue on? And then acceptance. Now, the acceptance part is important, is you need to accept the consequences of your actions. So not doing something can be an action, but do you accept that if you do act on it, the consequences? So it's just awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance. And that doesn't have to go over a 10-minute period. It can be quite quick. Acceptance is a big part of intentionality and mindfulness and our agency. So part of the reasons why we get into maladaptive strategies is we're not accepting the damage it's doing. So,
absolutely.
Being aware of the thought, acknowledging that thought. Do you need to? Is it true? Do I need to act on it? And then for the third step, acceptance of my behaviours, and it could stop you and help you to be more mindful in your approach towards what you do next.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anyone who sort of is a bit like lost in, because they're like, what the fuck is mindfulness? It's basically just having an awareness of your present moment, your present situation, but without any kind of judgment. And so, like Josh is saying, things pop into your head. I mean, I think most people have some kind of like internal monologue running. I know not everyone does, but I think most people you come across do. And then we can judge ourselves. So not only are we going through the process of judging ourselves for our actions from like the past, where we sort of ruminate on things on the past, we can stress out and have anxiety about future things coming up, where like how am I going to handle this? And then there's also the but sometimes like the judgment attached to, like, I don't know, you see someone and you make like a bitchy comment in your mind about what they're wearing or what they're doing or something else, and then you judge yourself for that. Whereas like mindfulness is just about, like you're saying, like becoming aware of the thought, acknowledging it, and then just accepting it. Yep, I've had this thought.
Yeah, so mindfulness helps you to be aware of your surroundings, but also to escape the stimuli, which is another word for whatever's causing you some sort of level of distress or discomfort. So it allows you to be open with yourself, accepting of the situation, and then curious. So why am I having this thought?
Yep.
How does it affect me? Is there any evidence for it? Do I need to act on it? Is it going to improve my life? Can I just pay it off? That sort of thing. The challenges we have as humans is we can't control the thoughts that come into our heads, just what we do in response.
But that's what I kind of like about your AAA strategy is I feel like it kind of incorporates a little bit of kind of like the cognitive behavioral aspect of like challenging the thought, like where's the evidence for this thought, where do I actually have to action it, do I have to action it now, or is this something that I can like tackle a little bit later? Like, so I think it kind of combines almost that element of mindfulness by being attuned to like your own cognitions and how things are kind of coming into your head, but kind of giving yourself that pause before responding, so you're not doing something that perhaps then you're going to waste time thinking about in the future, being like regretful of.
Yeah, that's right. Well said. Yeah, I agree with all those points, really. Yeah.
Why, thank you. I should have you on more often. So if Josh is comfortable, I might kind of put that little thing in the show notes for the awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of something that, it's like we're saying, it's a really simple strategy and something to kind of take away with you from this Mindfulness Mondays episode. But as well, I guess, how have you found the month of June? How have you sort of either felt about it, or like, maybe as men who, have had your own struggles with your mental health in the past, and also endured some post-traumatic stress, like, talk to me about what this month sort of maybe means to you, and maybe what your hope is for it moving forward.
Yeah, so one of the things I've noticed really is the absence, really, and it's been quite silent. The world has continued on regardless of this month.
Yeah.
So it's been quite silent. There's more work to be done. I feel that there's not a lot of lead up in May about the Mental Health Awareness Month, Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I feel if it was just straight up Mental Health Awareness Month, it may be seen differently. But one of the things that I've become consciously aware of, especially for your listeners, is that we're the ones in the community has to make the change. So I know in Australia we're used to the government making changes or the media, pushing something. Well, that's not happening here with, especially in Australia. So we have to do it ourselves, and an important medium for doing that is what we're doing now. Podcasts, social media. So it's up to us to find time to promote mental health awareness, which essentially means for some people promoting, I guess, what they would call weakness. And the reason people are seeing weakness as mental health issues, like, oh, that guy's weak. But if we see it as an opportunity to recover and then share knowledge with others so they don't make the same, or not so much mistakes, but so that they can, learn, because shared knowledge influences culture. So our culture can grow from more shared knowledge around mental health and more promoting and encouraging and celebrating mental health research, mental health recovery, and people who actually want to, be in that space, who want to promote it, work in it, that sort of stuff. But I feel that organisations, the Queensland Police Force or other sort of police forces, for example, I live in Queensland, so they haven't promoted men's mental health awareness month at all. You see today's PTSD Awareness Day, June 27, and I haven't seen organisations promote that. You're certainly not going to see the Australian Army promoting PTSD Awareness Day. So my point being, without waffling, is it's up to the individual to go out there and make the change. So therefore, the change is probably going to be more challenging. It's probably going to take longer, but that doesn't mean we can't accept it.
Yeah.
That's
No,
my
that
take
makes
on
sense.
that. Yeah.
And I would say, I think a great resource, and I want to say personally, there's a great organization called the Phoenix Foundation in Australia, and they are a trauma focused foundation, and they have been sharing stuff like every single day. So
Wow.
I'm like,
That's awesome.
yeah. So yay for them. They have some great resources. They have courses for clinicians to help them be better informed with dealing with people in trauma based or trauma care centers. They have courses just for like a layman or like a manager, supervisor who may be dealing with people who are exposed to trauma at work, all that kind of stuff. They've got and lots of like psychoeducation too. So that is definitely an Australian foundation and organization who are doing good work and who do care, which I think needs to be said and acknowledged. I think so. Living over in the States, obviously, there's lots going on over here at the moment, but there's we won't delve into that filthy political realm just yet. But I would say there's a drumbeat. There is a constant drumbeat that's getting louder. I would say in a good way, of people like you, people like half of the other podcast guests I've had on. Like, I would say, I think I've almost done like 50 episodes, and majority of those guests have been men.
Okay.
Men who have come on and who have had crazy long law enforcement careers, firefighting careers, Purple Heart recipients, military veterans, all of the things, and they come on and they talk about their mental health. And what I think, and granted, I know I say it from a female's and a woman's perspective, so I never want it to come across as condescending or diminishing or anything like that. But I'm a woman who has worked in male dominated fields, and I am additionally married to a first responder who has been on the job for, I think, 23 or 24 years or something like that. You need people in your life as a man. Like, even like Josh talked about it before, that I think men haven't been as good at building a community around them that is supportive. Men build communities, whether it's sport, whether it's video games, whether it's drinking, I don't know, golf, fucking whatever. But men build communities, but I don't know whether that supportive element is always attached so that they could call their mate up and be like, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of one of the things that really does need to be generated. And if someone, and it doesn't have to be you. So I think it's also two-pronged. It's like, it doesn't just have to be you to acknowledge, like Josh said, when you are struggling, and reach out to someone who, you know, should be supportive of you. But it's also about you being an advocate and an ally to the other men in your life, to hold space for them if they call you up and they admit that they're struggling, or you are noticing behavior in them and you know that it's not how they normally show up, and being comfortable by having those conversations. And I know it sounds easy saying it to me as or me saying it as a woman, but you know, women don't think it's weak for men to show emotions. And unfortunately, I think it's just a load of bullshit that has been fed to you guys for so long that you've internalized it and believed it through society, through culture, all of the things. And we don't. And if there are people in your life who feel that way, if you do show vulnerability or express your emotions, they're not the kind of people that you should have in your life. It's kind of,
That's correct. So you've made very good points there, and I'm glad you've raised it. That's excellent. So I'd just like to reinforce, especially for the people.
Yeah, please do.
And that is, your environment is two things: people you hang around, and that's the part you've just touched on, and of course your environment, your physical environment. So you've raised an excellent example there of how negatively impacting people you associate with regularly can affect you.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are negatively evaluating you because of your genuine emotions, then that's a red flag. So negative evaluation can be a hindrance towards, it can be a barrier towards people seeking assistance, especially amongst men. So if we eliminate, or if we reduce negative evaluation, then we can increase people wanting to seek assistance.
Absolutely.
So you've made a very good point. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think as well, I think one of the important things to be aware of is there is a growing community of veterans, of former first responders, current first responders who really want to be active in helping this community. So we talk about cultural competence. It's essentially someone in a mental health clinician assistance resource field understanding and having like a particular level of insight to what it is to perform a first responder role, or to, you know, be in the military or something like that, because sometimes it does help to have that level of understanding, because then it helps you help that person when they are in crisis in a different way to perhaps a normal civilian. So there are those resources available if it is that's something that's going to help you, is actually talking to someone. But I think it's also really important to acknowledge that that can be a really huge step for people too, and especially men. Sometimes picking up, like I've had guests here and they go, picking up that phone, it felt like a fucking brick. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, is to pick up that phone and make that phone call.
Yeah, that's true. And so the other day I put so you're talking about communications, and people can't choose an option if they don't know there's one to take. There are
Mm-hmm.
options to communicating, and that's non-verbal communication. So I made a post on Instagram the other day about non-verbal cues and
Mm-hmm.
communication. Sorry, and sending a birthday card to someone. If you're not a big writer, then a birthday card's for you. You don't have to write much, and it shows people care,
Yeah.
and you've got their address. So if things happen in the future, really at the higher end of the scale, you can send the ambos or police around there to help them if you really need to.
Mm-hmm.
But a birthday card shows a good way of bonding with someone over great distances, shows you care, shows you're interested, and you don't have to write heaps and people keep them. If you
Yeah.
really want to get excited, you can write a letter. Same thing. And with military history, how many letters have been written that you've seen from World War One and Two, where they've made it into the war memorials and stuff? Letters hold great value. Your history is etched in the ink of a pen, and it's there
Mm-hmm.
forever. Or people keep letters as well. They show bond.
Yep.
So it's a way of communicating. It may not be immediate, but it is a way of you non-verbally communicating without being judged. No negative evaluation there. Once again, and you send it off to
Yep.
your mate. Shows you
Yep.
care. We're going to write back. At the end. How many people on deployment have written letters?
Yeah.
Heaps. I did when I was in Solomon's 2003. Wrote letters. When I was in Malaysia 2000, I wrote letters.
Yep.
So people write letters. It is a non-verbal way. It's an alternative way. But if you don't feel like picking up the brick, write a letter. However, the phone would have more immediacy, so that'd be more urgent sort of thing.
Yes.
But letters definitely business postcards, business. Birthday cards, and if you're worried about your mate's behaviour on the piss, then stick a condom in it. Like you don't want him reproducing. Use that sense of humour that you've forged over the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably like one of the other things that I guess I want to draw attention to as well is, especially men, I'll be like, and I think I spoke about it on my radio show the other day, like for all the stuff that I do, my husband doesn't really talk to me that much. It's just I'm not that person for him. And that's okay. A lot of other men do talk to me. A lot of men, we have these conversations and we're like halfway through and they turn and look at me and go, I can't believe I just told you that. I've never told anyone that before. My wife doesn't even know that. Like, some people will feel comfortable talking with a female. Some people will feel more comfortable talking man to man. Equally, if you are not there yet, or talking to someone is just not your jam, there are lots of other coping skills and strategies that you can incorporate into your day and into a daily practice that are going to strengthen, your resilience, build your mental health, help you cope better, that don't involve necessarily talking to someone. Can also just be helping to, regulate your nervous system a little bit better. And I wrote a great article about it. I might put a link to that article in the show notes. And it was talking about, being empowered as a first responder or like a military veteran, that making, like Josh and I have talked about today, like being intentional and, making choices, because as much as it's a choice to engage in, better coping skills and strategies and educating yourself and gaining that knowledge, it's also a choice not to.
Yep.
And you have to live with the consequences either way. So whether it is talking to someone like Josh, who is a provisional psychologist, whether it's talking to someone like me, I do life and wellness coaching. So it's obviously like a lower level. So not for someone experiencing like a mental health crisis or in need of a disorder. There's a whole spectrum and a continuum of people that you can talk to. But additionally, there is like a never-ending list of things that you can engage in, whether it's journaling, whether it's practicing gratitude. It could be listening to a couple of minutes of, bilateral stimulation music, practicing mindfulness meditation, breathing exercises like either box breathing, deep diaphragmatic breathing. Throw some others if you've got them at me, Josh. Question without notice. Exercising, getting out in nature, all that kind of thing.
There is the aware technique. That's a bit challenging to.
That was a very large book you just pulled out.
This is the CBT book that I like. Okay, so there's the aware technique. So this is a groundbreaking situation for me because this is the first time, and I knew this day would come, where I have to refer to a book in all the podcasts I've been on. So I'm going to accept weakness here in the sense that I have to refer to the book, but there is some credibility. So
there is.
Thank you very much.
That's all right. I will clip this for you and send it to you so you can have it in perpetuity, my friend.
Okay, so for the listeners, this is the Cognitive Behavior Therapy 3rd edition written by Beck. Now, Beck is the dude who invented CBT, and I think it's written by his daughter, I think. So this is the aware technique. Now, just so I get it right, it basically, it's 5 steps. So accept the anxiety or other emotions such as, depression or hypertension, stress or whatever. Watch it, act constructively with it, repeat the steps, accept the best. So it's similar to mine. Mine's probably easier and probably better for you to do because I'm a legend. However, so once again, we're back at that acceptance. Accept it. What does it mean to you? Is the watch it part? What does it? Do I have to act on it? What does it mean? What can I do with it? Act constructively. So once again, where we're talking about the actions as a result of that. Not so much. This is to do with the 3 A's were to do with a thought, a cognition that's come in. This is to do with emotions.
Yeah.
So the emotion I'm experiencing, anxiety, depression, panic, fear, that sort of thing. Watch it. So you've accepted it. I'm aware this is happening. All right, I'll sit with it. Act constructively with it. It's not all good, not all bad. What's it teaching with me? And then repeat the steps. So you go through until you basically, and you're accepting the best. So therefore, what that means is you are hopeful for the outcome. So hope. So the higher a person's hope that they have, the more chance they are of recovering. So hope is directly correlated with positive recovery. So expecting the best is another way of saying hope.
Yeah. No, I like it. And apparently look for a CBT workbook coming at you shortly from one Jay Bailey.
I'll crack on with it. Yeah. There you go. I had that available just in case because
here's something I prepared earlier.
Yeah, well, the readers or the viewers, listeners, we need to be. Your podcast is most definitely one where people don't make shit up. So should be commended for that.
Thank you. Well, I want to put something on the table for you and I to do another Mindfulness Mondays episode where we come back, and here's one I prepared earlier. We're not going to get to it today. I want to discuss post-traumatic growth with one Jay Bailey over there, and I'm giving him some homework today so he can go away and read up on Dr. Richard Tedeschi, so we can come back in and have a bit of a conversation about it. Simply because I have had lots of conversations about post-traumatic growth in the last couple of weeks for another podcast guest, and I think it would be an important tool to talk about on another or a subsequent Mindfulness Mondays podcast. So if Josh would be happy to join me.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah.
All right. Any parting words, parting thoughts, or you're happy just to?
Well, I feel that for the listeners, I'd really like once again congratulate you on your service and sacrifice you've made. And asking for help is not weakness. And remember that knowledge shared creates a stronger culture.
Yeah.
So you're not really making mistakes; you're just gaining knowledge. So, and I think trying to avoid areas where you're going to be negatively evaluated, really, if that's possible. That's pretty much my parting message. But everyone should really feel that the contribution is valued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess my parting one would be, as someone who has lost a, important male figure in her life to suicide, men's mental health is important. It's impactful. It doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, and it's something that should be seen with the importance that it has all year, not just the month of June. Josh and I wanted to jump on because it's the month when it's highlighted, and post-traumatic stress is highlighted in the month of June. But I think it's important to understand and focus on the fact that it's not just something we do once and we're going to be okay. It's not something that we focus on just for, the month of June and then it's going to be, fucking sunshine and rainbows moving forward from here. It's putting practices in place. It's educating yourself. It's working on you because you deserve it. And despite whether our culture tells you different, whether that's military culture or first responder culture or societal culture tells you any differently, you deserve to feel well, both physically and mentally. And I think understanding that you do deserve it means that you should put in the time and the effort, because the people that you love want you to be well too. And so that would probably just be my parting gift. All right, Mr. Bailey, this has been a pleasure as always. All right, this has been another episode of Mindfulness Mondays, a bonus series within the I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness podcast. I've been your host, Erin Jane, and as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.